And to introduce the panel, we have Jeff Reinbold, who's the Assistant Director for Partnerships and Civic Engagement of the National Park Service. And so, Jeff.
Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. We're going to do this from down here just to break it up a little bit. It is a panel of one. So what I'm going to do is introduce Dave in a second. Spoiler alert, the Park Service is 100 years old, right? In case you haven't heard. Well, you're going to hear a lot more about it, and we have 7 more months to keep saying this. So, what I wanted to do, though, is we're going to talk about the Find Your Park component of this. So Secretary Jewell, many of our other speakers, have talked about all these things that are coming together in this, the 100th year of the Park Service, and about creating this big tent that some of these can live under, and that we have the chance to give greater attention to through the promotion of our national parks. So, but in terms of context, some of you may have heard Director Jarvis say this, but I think it's really important. The seeds of the approach for this centennial actually come from the 1950s, right? So take yourself back to the mid-50s right now. We're probably 10 years after World War II. We just came out of the Korean War. We've got all of these returning vets, right? We see incredible economic prosperity in the country. We haven't hit the civil rights movement yet. But we all of a sudden see these vets and people with money moving out of cities and starting to move into suburbs. And what else are they doing with their free time? They're starting families, right? So the baby boomers, the seeds of the baby boomers, if you will, are planted. And we also find that for several years now, we haven't invested in our national parks. They're really not front of mind for folks. And so an initiative is launched in the mid-50s to get us ready for 1966, Mission 66 it's called. And part of it is a building boom. So anybody, if you've been to a park, you can definitely tell the Mission 66 structures that are out there, right? That's what gets a lot of attention. But there's also this big marketing effort to get people to go out and see their parks and experience their parks. And it's no coincidence that if you look at the end of the 60s and into the 70s, some of the most important environmental legislation in the history of this country is passed, right? You look at every leader of our major environmental groups, our great public agencies, most of them right now or in the recent past came out of that generation, right? They were people who went out to national parks. So the challenge before us this year is really to figure out how do we engage that next group. Major demographic shift underway. We've all talked about the millennials, digital natives, right? How are we relevant to that next generation? How do we build that next generation of supporters? So what we did was we turned to the National Park Foundation, helped them kind of on steroids grow significantly over the last 5 or 6 years, and help us to try to build as big a tent as we could to get as many initiatives, get attention for a lot of the initiatives that were out there and new ones we wanted to start. So you've heard about some of the work when it comes to legislation. Every Kid in the Park is under there, all these other wonderful things. But we also wanted to get people's attention, and particularly, we wanted to get millennials' attention. So our challenge to NPF was ignite people's imagination, right? Interest a new generation in national parks. Make us a little uncomfortable. Present these in ways that maybe we haven't seen before, but that next generation would really get engaged with these. And so we were really fortunate that in the, I think it's probably 2009 or so, David French joined NPF, came to them from MTV, and he has been one of the major architects of the Find Your Park campaign. So I'm going to turn it over to David and let him update you on where we are.
We love making the Park Service uncomfortable. It's our favorite thing to do. Good morning. As Jeff mentioned, I'm David French. I'm Senior Vice President, Marketing, Communications, and Corporate Partnerships at the National Park Foundation, and as Jeff alluded to, for about the last 7 years of my life, it's been called Find Your Park and the National Park Service Centennial. So it's been a fun ride. As Jeff alluded to, yeah, this is not going to work, so we're going to need some help getting through slides. We're going to give you a very quick kind of update, recap, and pull back a lot of the curtains on what's happening with Find Your Park. Hopefully you've all seen it out in the universe over the last 15 months or so. So we're going to do a quick look at recent successes over the last year or so, what's ahead, and then most importantly, I want to touch on a couple of lessons learned. So the first thing I want to touch on is we started planning, next slide, for Find Your Park many, many years ago. This is just a quick glimpse at kind of what the 3-year process looks like. But it was multi-phased, multi-year endeavor. And I would actually argue it started well before this. We did a lot of listening, a lot of research, and a lot of learning before we started to get into that create phase of what Find Your Park would actually be. We also got into then inviting people. We actually launched the campaign in 15, and then in 16, here we are. We're finally here. Never thought we'd get here, but we're here. And it's time to pay a nod to the actual birthday, the centennial itself. Next slide. Now, when you actually get to Find Your Park, notice it's not Happy Birthday National Park Service, right? The idea is we were inciting a movement. We wanted to create, as Jeff alluded to, a very big tent that a lot of people could participate in. Find Your Park is, in fact, a call to action, right? And it's not about me. It's not me being prescriptive and telling you how you need to experience a park. It's inviting you to tell us how you have those park experiences. And really, it goes back to the idea of creating that next generation of park visitors, advocates, and supporters. So it all comes back to that centennial mission that the Park Service has set out with. So what I want to do now is show you a quick video of what Find Your Park has looked like over the last several months and some of the highlights. So let's take a look.
Our national parks have been called America's best idea, and in 2016, the National Park Service is turning 100. To celebrate, the National Park Service and its partner, the National Park Foundation, have created another big idea. Enter Find Your Park. Find Your Park is a movement to inspire the next generation of park visitors, supporters, and advocates. We challenge our audience to think in totally new ways about what a park can be. And the word is getting out. An all-out PR blitz garnered more than 1.5 billion impressions and more than 1,000 hits in the first week alone. Translation, a ton of people saw Find Your Park all over the media, including stories in the Associated Press, People, Mashable, Variety, and Adweek. A morning rush takeover of Times Square's biggest digital billboards dazzled thousands of commuters and tourists. We traveled to New York, LA, DC, and to parks and cities across the country with our celebrity friends and some cutting-edge technology, helping countless people find their park. We helped kick off Every Kid in a Park, an initiative to ensure kids everywhere in America are able to experience the parks. We even celebrated National Park Week along the way. And to help tell our story, we invited our corporate partners to join the movement. You've heard of these brands? Then you're going to hear about Find Your Park. And thanks to our media partners, you're seeing Find Your Park everywhere. We've got centennial ambassadors with huge social followings. Over 20,000 of our very own National Park Service employees are helping to spread the buzz. We've been creating and sharing parks-related content with actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his production company, Hit Record. Even the president got in on Find Your Park.
We're going to encourage every American to find your park.
The First Lady made a video too, and she's teaming up with former First Lady Laura Bush as co-chairs of the entire campaign. In no time at all, thousands of people were rushing to findyourpark.com to share their Find Your Park stories and see stories from others. And this incredible momentum is only going to grow. Over the next 2 years, the Find Your Park campaign will reach Americans across the country and let them know that just around the corner, there's a park for them. And in 2016, we're really going to have some fun. It's going to be the party of the century as we celebrate 100 years of the National Park Service, and everyone's invited. And now you can be part of this amazing once-in-a-lifetime moment. It reminds us that the national parks are a part of all of us, and together, we need to support them. So come along for the ride. Get involved, because this is going to be big. Big enough to make the national parks stronger and more beloved than ever for the next 100 years.
Great, that video looks really good up on that screen, by the way. Thanks to the AV team, appreciate that. A couple things I want to call out just from that video. I love the fact that it is a movement, right? It is the Find Your Park, Encuentra tu Parque movement is really about extending that invitation and creating a big tent that everybody can participate in. So whether it's us helping amplify Every Kid in a Park, or much of the good work that all of you are doing out there, Find Your Park is able to do that. One of the things that we were really dedicated to when we launched Find Your Park a couple years ago, I distinctly remember the moment sitting around the table with Director Jarvis and many others saying, okay, we have to define what success looks like. Find Your Park can't be everything, so how do we measure success through this? And it really comes down to 3 buckets for me. Relevancy, engagement, and support. Okay, relevancy, like awareness. Okay, so how many people are seeing Find Your Park out there in the world, but also how is Find Your Park actually being relevant to their lives? So we measure, we do things to measure that through brand tracking studies, measuring things like intent, which we'll show in a little bit. But it's that first phase of what I like to call the constituent or consumer journey. People have to know us before they can like us, before they can love us, right? So that's what relevancy is. Engagement is that like part. So how are people actively participating in the campaign? Are we boosting visitation? Are people sharing content with us? Are they liking what we're showing? So we're getting great measures out of that work as well. And then finally, support. So this is kind of at the end of that consumer journey is, are we driving people to actually want to deeply participate in the parks movement? Are people wanting to volunteer more? Are they wanting to donate? Are they wanting to go out and advocate? So we start looking at measures like that as well. So let's start on the first, which is relevancy, and just look at some big numbers here, and I know they'll be a little bit shocking. Next slide. Currently, Find Your Park to date stands at 7.65 billion impressions. I know that means nothing. Okay, it's a huge, huge number. The best way I can compare it to is that is 68 times the number of people that watched this year's Super Bowl have seen Find Your Park. So that is great. Something I want to underscore is we're not buying any media, okay? So this is built through a lot of partnerships, a lot of people willing to get Find Your Park out there in a really prominent, visible way. I want to show you the next slide. It shows you a little bit of a breakdown on how we divide those media impressions up. So the first bucket you see is the 5.3 billion. That's actually earned media, that's PR. The 2.1 billion is actually donated media, which I'll show you more of in a second, but those are the things like TV, PSA airtime, the magazine print ads we've getting donated to us, some of the bus shelters, stuff like that. And then finally, about 300 million or so in social media and really using that as an engine. So if I were to total all of that up, and I was actually doing a media buy to power Find Your Park, it would be over $100 million to buy that kind of media. So we've been really fortunate in how we've been able to get the word out. Next slide. So a couple other things. So we love the quantitative stuff. The numbers are great, but I want to talk about qualitative as well because that gives you a little bit more sense of, well, how is the campaign message actually resonating? So the good news is we're reaching our target audience. 1 in 3 young millennials, okay, so that's 18 to 24, 18 to 25, recall seeing a Find Your Park ad or a campaign message. To a similar campaign of our size, that would be about 1 in 7. So we're definitely exceeding or beating the average. Close to 80% of Americans found the advertising to be more appealing, and 74% think it really stands out. That's compared to an average of about 60%. So we're hitting above our weight, which is really terrific to see. What I also love is that it's highly persuasive. 97%, that's like from a marketing guy perspective, that's a ridiculous number, said that the ads made people more interested in visiting a national park. So all of that is really, really exciting. It says, Find Your Park is working, our pressure testing is paying off, and we're actually seeing it translate in people understanding, seeing, recognizing, and connecting with our message. Next slide. Also, from a qualitative standpoint, really important that we were getting people past the idea of what they thought parks were. So we're about changing perceptions, okay? So when we did our initial research, we got 3 answers when I asked, well, what do you think about when I mentioned the 2 words national parks? And I got 3 answers. It's Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and Yosemite, okay? And I love those parks, by the way. They're great. But there's over 410 other parks that we really needed to make sure the population, as well as especially the millennial audience, was aware of. And so what you're seeing here is pre-campaign testing and post-campaign testing, and what you're seeing is a real now diversity in what people are acknowledging when they hear the words national parks after seeing the Find Your Park advertising, which is great. We're changing perceptions. We're making people realize that there's beautiful landscape parks, but there's also really important cultural, iconic parks, that there are historic parks that they can relate to and connect with. So we're changing perceptions as well. So we're seeing really great work, both from a quantitative and a qualitative standpoint, pay off for Find Your Park on the relevancy. Let's move on to engagement. So 307 million, another mammoth number. Hopefully everybody's familiar with it. That was the number of people that visited national parks last year. What's great, at least in part, is that Find Your Park was part of that. And as you can see from some of the quotes up there, a significant amount of credit just for building that awareness is driving that visitation and getting people out and visiting parks. What's exciting is I think we'll break this number, Jeff, right, this year? Yes. Hopefully we're going to continue that engagement. We're going to see more people going to parks. What's really important, though, is you see places that, like Fort Stanwix, for example, that are getting more visitation. So it's not just the big parks, right, but the smaller local historic cultural parks are also seeing upticks in visitation as well, which is exactly what we wanted. Next slide. So other performance measures in terms of engagement. So it's not just visitation. We also look at social actions. So social actions, comments, likes, shares, so people actually seeing Find Your Park content and then participating with it. We've had 3.3 million social actions, which is great. We've had 61,000 people submit their Find Your Park story. The hashtag has been used 250,000 times. So we're excited by all of that because that, once again, identifies that we're inciting a movement here, that a lot of people are participating. It isn't one person out there saying, hey, we're so great, we're doing a big media buy to tell you. It's a lot of people rallying behind a message. You know, and one slide I don't have up here, but it's also really important that it's not the size of the audience we're attracting, it's also the type of audience, right? So we're really being dutiful about making sure we're engaging the multicultural community and thinking about Encuentra Tu Parque and the Latino community, the African American community, and giving places and ways and content, and we're sharing in a really holistic manner and finding opportunities for engagement. And the good news is we're seeing with those demographics great lifts as well in terms of wantingness to visit parks, reducing fears about parks being kind of scary places, that these are welcoming places, and that the Park Service is paying attention to how we're delivering that more kind of holistic story. So still a lot of work to be done there, but we're making progress. Next slide. Okay, so to support, let's start here with some of the qualitative stuff. I love this slide because those first two boxes you see, so it's okay when I tell you how great I am, it's so much better when your friend tells you how great I am, and that's what a brand ambassador is all about, right? And that's what park promotion is all about. So you look at, we've seen great uptick in terms of people that would go out of their way to recommend a national park to their friends. We love that. That is the essence of real grassroots kind of modern marketing. And so we're really, really excited about that. But also people going out of their way to recommend supporting parks. And if you look over the slide, 92% of people who saw Find Your Park had said they'd be more interested in donating to parks. That's good for everybody, right? Not just the National Park Foundation. That's great for everybody. And then what I'm also really excited about is interest in volunteering. So for those, especially the millennial generation, might not be ready to give yet, okay, but how can they support, really interested in volunteering? We're seeing great lifts, a 21% lift in interest in volunteering. And if you go to the next slide, let's dive into the quantitative numbers. We're actually seeing that come together in real life in terms of the numbers of both volunteers and volunteer hours we've seen in FY15 for the National Park Service. So great uptick in that. I won't say Find Your Park gets all the credit for that, but I think it certainly had a really significant part. So we're really excited about where Find Your Park is going in terms of relevancy, engagement, and support. If we go to the next slide and we look at it all together, you get a really holistic view that this is a movement, right? And we're really looking to drive something that's propelling the idea of national parks into the next century and what that can be and engaging that next generation. And we have to do it through a multi-pronged effort, right? And so we're seeing great traction here. Find Your Park is right in its mid-stride, and we're really excited about it. To dive into a couple more things, these lift numbers, by the way, you see underneath, that's just from February. So you get a good idea that we're getting into our next full stride as we go into the spring and summer visitation season. A couple inside the house numbers from the foundation, if you look at the bottom. Since we launched Find Your Park, we have over 300,000 new constituents to the foundation. That's not necessarily a donor yet, but that is someone who's interacting with us. It's usually an email file. Also, our average donation for someone who's coming through findyourpark.com is about $70. The average online donation in our vertical for the environmental vertical is about 53. So we're not only seeing people coming through wanting to donate, but that they're a high quality donor. So we're really excited to see that moving forward. So that's where Find Your Park has been. That's where all, kind of what we've accomplished to date. A lot more to go. So let's tackle that next and just think about, okay, we're here. It's the centennial. We've finally arrived. Again, Find Your Park, more than a birthday party, but there is an opportunity here to make a nod to the birthday party itself. So let's take a quick look at the calendar, which is the next slide. I apologize. You'll see the advertising here in a second. It's not showing up. But this is just Find Your Park, what I call windowing strategy, right? So this is how we're activating across multiple channels, which you see on the left, throughout the rest of the year. And so you look at public relations, you look at digital social, you look at advertising, you look at events. We're really being concerted that we are tackling every single one of these channels in a smart windowing strategy. So we're continuing to have a drumbeat of visibility for Find Your Park, and it's happening in a really thoughtful, seamless way. So it's really the magic and the mix of all these channels that makes Find Your Park hum. So, and then needless to say, there's a lot going on. And there's a lot going on outside of this. This is just Find Your Park, but as you can imagine and as you know, there's a ton of events happening around the Centennial for the National Park Service. So first thing I want to show you is the creative. Hopefully most of you have seen this. Perhaps there's a couple of you that have not, but I want to show you the actual National Park Service 30-second TV spot, which is now airing on television and online. So take a look. So I love that thing. And we've gotten some great media coverage. Thank you for the claps. Huge compliment to my esteemed colleagues and friends at Gray Advertising, who have really been, in many ways, the geniuses behind putting Find Your Park together with us. And that spot was not easy to make. And we spent a lot of time with them making that spot. But notice, it goes back to the Find Your Park message, right? That a park can be many, many different things and redefining what a park can be. So we're really excited about it. So up here, you see the creative, the print creative that's now out in the world. Does everybody notice the iconography, how it makes a 100 with the park symbols up top? So a little twist to be a little fun there. You'll see that out and alive. We were actually already seeing it around, I think there's a couple up in DuPont Circle if you make your way up there. But we're seeing it around the country. All of this donated media, really proud and happy to have friends like the National Association of Broadcasters, the Outdoor Advertising Association that's making this happen. What I'm really excited about is on the next slide is what we have happening in Times Square as we speak. We have donated media that is on 42nd Street, right in the heart of Times Square, as well as a little bit up on 45th Street. This is brand new inventory. This one in the middle they call the waterfall, but so happens the owner of this media is a big Parks fan. So he's giving it to us for free, and we're getting rotation in it for a couple minutes every hour right in the heart of Times Square, and that's why we call it a movement, right? Like, how cool is that? And you can see on the right-hand side, your right-hand side, yeah, that it's motion activated, and there's some really great stuff happening, and we have more surprises like that coming up throughout the rest of the summer. So that's what the creative looks like, and you'll see on the marketplace. Next slide. PR, so I started as a publicist at MTV, and that's kind of like where I come from, and Find Your Park runs on earned media. There's no doubt about it. It's a huge, huge driver. We were so lucky. Maybe you noticed about 3 weeks ago, we had roadblocks. Well, roadblocks is throughout the week, we had segments airing on both the Today Show and Good Morning America at the same time. That was, that's like the Super Bowl on steroids for a publicist. So that's amazing. We're on the cover of Outside Magazine, Travel and Leisure, getting great coverage. throughout the country, both in print, digital, out-of-home, broadcast. It's been really, really terrific. So as we move forward, next slide. Sorry, one more example is we have this great, it's not just traditional media, it's about social media as well, and really thinking about outside the box media partnerships. Twitter actually came to us, which was awesome, and said, we want to partner with you, we want to be part of the Centennial, how can we participate? So you'll notice that they created this very large 3D Find Your Park hashtag that has now been traveling across the country with our park rangers and staff and others, and it has taken off. It has a life of its own now. And as well as Twitter gave us our own emoji, which is a really big deal if you know anything about that. Apparently that costs like $1 million or something. Don't quote me on that. But the Park Service and us spent a lot of time deciding what that emoji was going to look like. So it's a female ranger. You can barely make her out, but she's lovely. And when we hosted our Twitter chat during National Park Week, we were trending nationally, which is awesome. Again, that's like the Super Bowl for a publicist, so that was really exciting. So we've had some really, really good earned media traction happen around Find Your Park. And it continues. So this window strategy, and we're really picking out important moments where we can drive attention around parks and tying the Find Your Park and Encuentra tu Parque message to it. So really looking at the diversity of media we're talking to, looking at the ways that we can get the word out, and both from a top-down approach, so that's the big media, that's the Today Show, that's to the NBC Nightly News, but also the bottom-up approach and doing things like the Twitter chats and parties and really driving social media up. So our work is not done. We have a big summer ahead. We have the full PR team working on this non-stop. We call it the always on news engine. So a lot more work to go. Next slide. Events are also a big part of what we're doing. Events that are really about being inventive and making people think differently about what a park can be. Really going back to that Find Your Park message. Also, we're being thoughtful about not always having these events in parks, okay? We want to be reaching out into communities, especially urban centers, engaging new audiences, especially millennials, and say, okay, what does a park look like? We've since launched something called the Park Exchange event series. We kicked it off a couple weeks ago in Austin. We're going to have our next one in Chicago next week. But the idea is reinventing, reimagining in a highly interactive way what a park can be and bringing it to, and basically exchanging the idea. So what we did is we actually brought Redwood, okay, National Park, to, is that a national park? I'm sorry, I probably botched. National and State Park, thank you, Jeff, he's always there for me, to Austin. Why Austin? Austin, college town, we were on UT campus, the University of Texas campus, great multicultural town, so a great opportunity to reinvent what a park can be, and I'll show you guys a quick video of what that looked like.
Hi, I'm Andy Roddick, and I'm here at UT Austin with the National Park Foundation celebrating the centennial anniversary of the National Park Service and the Find Your Park movement.
We're hoping to engage the students here at the University of Texas and help them understand and see what being in the Redwood Forest would be like.
I especially want to thank our corporate partners who make Find Your Park possible and provide such tremendous support to the National Park Foundation.
Celebrating a century, the National Park Service held its 100th birthday party at UT. Tuesday evening, people were able to turn into a redwood tree, yes, a redwood tree, and see it grow to the top of the UT Tower there. You might be wondering, well, why the UT Tower? It's the same height as the tallest redwood, 300 feet tall.
And it's an important movement to ensure our national parks. They're the nation's greatest treasures. We need to preserve them and protect them for future generations.
Okay, so a really fun event. So if you missed it, what we did is we actually projected on the UT Tower a redwood tree, but kids, students, participants actually would create that redwood tree by movement. So it was about bringing together technology, changing the idea of what a park can be, and having some celebrity friends doesn't hurt either. So, next slide. We have some other park exchange events coming up. Please do not tweet this out to the world, okay? This is kind of confidential stuff. So next week, Chicago, we're going to be there. We're bringing New Orleans jazz to Chicago, and we're going to bring the idea of the second line in kind of a very fun, exciting way to Chicago and do some fun things. Do not repeat this, but Common will be our celebrity ambassador. We're really excited to have Common there. He's a big Parks fan. He's hosted the tree lighting for us a couple years, so we're really excited to have him. New York, I'm not going to fully give away, but that will be our big celebrity moment. All I will tell you is that we are bringing the idea of Thomas Edison National Historic Park to Manhattan. And we're going to have a little fun with the New York City skyline, and I will leave it at that. But again, really being inventive of what a park can be and making sure it's interactive with our audiences. Okay, one last part is this is partnerships. Partnerships, as you all know, is a huge part of what we do. It's what makes Find Your Park possible. As you saw from the video, we have really some tremendous corporate partners that are not only helping us fund Find Your Park, but also getting the word out and doing some really terrific activations that are bolstering the idea of parks, volunteer efforts, youth engagement activities, as well as some really, really fun, inventive work. And I'm going to show you a spot right now from our friends at Humana, who have really been inspired by the idea of bringing health and wellness, mind, body, soul, all of it together in the idea of parks. I'll tell you a little bit about this spot afterwards, but let's take a look at it now and enjoy.
I think you need to sit down, Marvin. Please.
Okay.
Look, there's no easy way to say this.
Yes?
Your nature levels are low.
My nature levels?
Yes, you tested negative for hiking, negative for landmark exposure, and sunset vistas.
I tested negative for sunset vistas?
Also, your pine needle numbers are almost anemic. And in my 35 years of practice, I've never seen someone with camping scores lower than you.
Oh my gosh, I hate camping.
I know you do, but we gotta change that, okay?
Okay. Am I gonna...
Live indoors the rest of your life? No. In fact, I'll tell you what. I'm going to write you a prescription for the national parks.
All right.
There's a lot of stuff you can do there. They got, animals, bears. You'll love it. Anyway, they got coastlines, grasslands, history, culture. Right away, you're going to notice that your NELs are going to bounce right back, dude.
My NELs?
Nature engagement levels.
Right.
So a great example of how our partners are participating and carrying the message as well. The Cause Marketing Forum is happening as we speak in Chicago right now, and that work is winning the Gold Award for their cause marketing campaign around Find Your Park. So we're so proud of our friends at Humana. They've really done terrific work. So what is this? Let's wrap it all together and let's see. I love this slide because it gives me a chance to say, okay, I always get inevitably the question, well, what did you learn through this process? Okay, a couple things. Don't be afraid to ask, right? Power and partnerships. There's amazing things that people will be willing to do and throw out on the table and things that you can offer back in return. So whether it's our great partners like all of you, working with the Park Service themselves, friends, media, corporations, whatever it might be, terrific partnerships is in fact the engine behind Find Your Park. It is why it exists. Having a smart call to action is really important. It's not passive. It could have very easily, and frankly, we looked at concepts that were Happy Birthday National Park Service, right? That would not have been Find Your Park. It's about inciting, it's about creating an invitation and making it about your audience and helping them define the future of national parks with you, okay? So that's a really important part, active participation. The magic is in the mix. You can't just pull one lever. We just couldn't do a TV spot and call it a day and hope for the best. It's the social media, it's the celebrity, it's the earned media. It's all of it really put together that has been the magic to Find Your Park. And then finally, content. super important. And you saw a bit of content already with what Humana did. Just around Memorial Day, we released a really beautiful spot through some of our other celebrity talent, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his production company Hit Record, with a returning veteran who's suffering from PTSD and is recovering by going and visiting national parks. It's a really beautiful piece of content. Content is awesome, and it really helps carry the message. So it's something that you will see us doing more and more of. Finally, the last question I always get is, well, how can I help? How can I be part of Find Your Park? Next slide. The answer is pretty easy. Certainly, feel free to share the message, spread the good word. You know, we love hashtag Find Your Park, hashtag Encuentra tu Parque. Be part of it, share it. It all is captured on findyourpark.com. We have a great catalog of content there now from people sharing their experiences from around the states and that live from around the globe. You can actually download and participate by getting some of the marketing assets for Find Your Park to put on your own materials and really participate it. Visit nextcenturyforparks.org, where all of that media lives. We welcome the help. Help spread the word. You know, I had this really interesting conversation at MTV while I was still there, was we really struggled with letting go of the brand, right? Being able to say, okay, we're not just gonna be the only ones to define the brand, we're gonna let our audience be part of that and shaping and being part of that. And frankly, that's the future. So take Find Your Park with you. Create your own media strategies, your own content strategies to help spread the word. And then, of course, we didn't spend any time on it, but now there's some great Find Your Park gear out there and some Centennial gear. So if you want to be a licensing partner, come visit us at nationalparks.org/centennial/licensing. And as part of that, we also have this amazing Centennial coin that's out there that we're pushing now that is helping the future of national parks. My dear friend Jason Reno, stand up everybody, wave a hand. Jason is the mastermind behind the Centennial coins, and he is also the guy, if you want to participate in helping that endeavor in selling those, we'd really appreciate the help. It is a huge part of what we're doing right now. So that is Find Your Park. Derek, I think I ran over by 2 minutes, so I apologize for that.
No apologies needed. We need the inspiration, so let's just give a little recognition of the great job that